In today's video, I'm going to go through some of the major, most famous waterfront condo buildings within the city of Toronto, all the way from downtown Toronto core waterfront, extending all the way west to Mimico, and give you some of my favorite ones, some of the buildings that I think are the best buildings in this area, and then comment on some other buildings that other people are a big fan of and I might find to be average or slightly above average, and give my commentary on those anyways because they're highly sought after and they're really talked about a lot as well. And as always, I have to stress, this is not an exhaustive list. I'm probably going to stop recording this and be like, oh, I forgot to talk about such and such building, or how can I ever forget to talk about this building? Before we get into it though, hello everyone. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Sam from SaberiSixRealEstate. I'm a Toronto real estate agent actively working across the Toronto and GTA market. On this channel, we like to do these types of videos: market stats, market reviews, buyer advice, seller advice, building reviews, and area analysis. So much. So if you find any of this content informative, definitely subscribe. And you can get in touch with me. My link is in the bio. You can set up an easy chat with me for your buying, selling, leasing inquiries, or your general inquiries and questions. Enough of that. Let's get to the point of today's video, which is the best waterfront condos within the city of Toronto. Now, one thing I have to make clear, I took the name and the subject quite literally. There are a lot of buildings that might be considered waterfront condos, and you might even have water views from really, really high up. But for my purposes, I'm only listing buildings that are really within maybe 2 minutes maximum walking distance from Lake Ontario. So certain buildings, such as let's say 10 York, which is technically a waterfront condo, but it's not practically a waterfront condo, although it's within walking distance from the waterfront, it's not really fronting on the water like I envisioned for this video. So there are certain buildings that I will not talk about in this video because they might be a little further away than the criteria of this video. And they're not in any particular order. Enough of that, let's start. Let's start with 250, 260, and 270 Queens Quay West. These are all sister buildings, obviously much older in nature. They are known as Harbor Point 1, Harbor Point 2, Harbor Point 3, and they were built in the late 80s to early 90s. I believe Harbor Point 1 was built around 1987. So much older. The appreciation upside is going to be a bit more limited. Ceiling heights will be a bit lower, but it's really constructed quite well. Location is absolutely fantastic. Even though every building on this list is waterfront, obviously there's some buildings that are a little bit further east, a little bit further west. This is quite central as you can really honestly get, right by Queens Quay. And because of the older age, these buildings are soundproofed quite well. They don't really make them like this anymore. I mean, some builders do for their high-end projects, but really this was common back in the day, and the soundproofing between units is amazing. Once again, due to the age, you're going to get really spacious layouts, and they're going to cost you less per square foot. But they do have limited amenities. The amenities have been updated throughout time, but they might appear a little bit outdated for some. So if you're heavy into the modern amenities for buildings that are even not, new, but maybe 10 years old, it might disappoint a bit. And the maintenance per square foot in this building is actually quite great for the age. And the maintenance per square foot in these buildings are actually quite great for the ages. However, utility costs, the utilities that are not included in the maintenance, can be on the higher end in these buildings. Obviously, utilities come down to usage, but I have heard feedback and certain residents have commented that due to the provider and sometimes the building has issues retaining heat, the utility costs can be a little bit on the higher end, higher than average compared to other buildings. So, obviously no building on this list is perfect. There's no such a thing as a perfect building. These are just my favorites. If you've had bad experiences with these buildings, that's unfortunate to hear, but these are just buildings that I like or can possibly recommend to buyers if it's the right fit in terms of budget and criteria. Moving forward to another set of 3 buildings, this time swinging all the way to the west, which are the Westlake condos. I've discussed these buildings in my best Toronto condos list in the past, but once again, Westlake Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, 2200 Lakeshore, 2212 Lakeshore, and 2220 Lakeshore. Now, these buildings compared to even, I would say, the ones I just mentioned and some of the other ones I'm going to mention are a little bit even on the busier side, even though they're not in downtown core, and how they're developed. 3 towers surrounding a little bit of a courtyard, a driveway with parking spots. The shoppers, the LCBO, other shops, the grocery store that's down there, there. There's gonna be a lot more traffic coming and going, even in the buildings as well. But really, for the amount of traffic, all three buildings, and not all three buildings are the same building, but they're the same development, they share the amenities for the most part. For the high level of traffic that I've seen, the elevator wait times are quite great, I would say. The location's great. And really, I'm comparing these buildings as waterfront condos compared to what's available, right? If you go closer to Marine Parade, this is just off of Marine Parade. Marine Parade ends when these three buildings kind of start on Lakeshore. A lot of those Marine Parade buildings are absolute, well, junk to mediocre. Most of them, I would say. There's other ones we're gonna mention on this list that I think are good quality, but most of them. These compared to those ones, and I would probably have to say compared to the Legion Road ones in the back, are much better. And really the amenities are absolutely fantastic. I also did talk about this condo and included it in my other video where I named the best gyms across the city, the best Toronto condo gyms. And the gym, the facilities, the swimming pool is amazing, it's huge. The facility is almost too big. It's too big for my own personal liking, but a lot of people are into huge amenities. And this is a great fit for those who are into huge amenities. Now the downside is only one of the buildings have direct access to the amenities. The other two, insofar as I'm aware, you have to kind of walk through the outside or walk through the underground parking. And I think 2200 is probably the best of all three. However, the 1+1s and 1s, which is what most people are looking at, are quite functional. Some of them have outdated finishes. These buildings are now around almost 10 years old now. So there was a lot of dark, wood and dark cabinetry that was used as finishes in these buildings. But if you can find a freshly renovated one, which I've seen a couple in these buildings, is definitely a great choice if it's the right fit for you in terms of criteria and budget. And another thing these buildings might lack, which is quite funny given the subject of this video, is that I have yet to see a unit with really clean water views. There are units with really good water views, don't get me wrong, but where it's located, you would expect more units to have better water views. And the water views in these units are sometimes semi-obstructed, if not most times semi-obstructed. We swing all the way back to Queens Quay, and we're gonna talk about 400 and 410 Queens Quay, the Aqua Condos by Mattamy Homes. Now, I'm typically not a fan of Mattamy Homes, but I think this is probably one of the best buildings. In fact, there's another building that's included on this list that is also a Mattamy Home condo. And listen, these two buildings are really, really situated well, right at Spadina and Queens Quay. Very affordable per square foot price. Now the management can be a little bit slow at times in this building, but they're quite competent. Slow and incompetent are not often the same thing. And the maintenance per square foot in these 400 Queens Quay buildings can be a little bit on the higher end. As a matter of fact, right now it's well above $1 per square foot, but it's all inclusive. So all the utilities are included in the price of the maintenance. So when you deduct the price of water, heat, and electricity, it essentially comes down to well below $1 per square foot. And the unit I purchased for a client in this building back in 2022, I think it was late 2022 or early 2023, was facing the gardener, and you could never tell it was facing the gardener. It wasn't right directly flush with the gardener. I think it was 5 to 6 stories above the gardener. You can definitely see the gardener, but it wasn't, right facing the gardener. Nonetheless, though, this building is surprisingly well insulated. You can barely hear the gardener from the unit. I would also say that great sound cancellation extends into the hallways as well. At least this is from the experience of my buyer who's lived there for now a year. And really, units in this building have some great views, especially southern facing units. Once again, it's right at Spadina and Queens Quay. Some of the one bedrooms that have those amazing units are the ones that have the bedroom in the middle of the floor plan. And as you guys know, I'm typically not a fan of that, but in this building, it's one of those buildings that pulls that off, because although yes, the bedroom is in the middle of the floor plan, it's directly exposed to the windows, it's directly exposed to the view, and the view for those units oftentimes, once again, are clear, clean water views. And the gym also has immaculate, amazing views of the lake and downtown Toronto. But expect resale value to be a bit more limited due to the higher maintenance, although the higher maintenance, when you do the math, as previously mentioned, kind of makes sense, right? It's all inclusive. Moving forward, 12 and 16 Bonnycastle. Now, as you guys know, I just brought a listing on market for sale in these buildings. I've actually already managed to sell it happily. I'll also make a video on that. I've already made a video on the unit when it was listed. I'll make a longer video talking about the transaction, what it says about the market. Nonetheless though, 12 and 16 Bonnycastle, although I brought a listing in it, it's not going to stop me from being objective about the building. I do think the building is a solid, I would probably have to say 7.5 to 8 out of 10, although you can catch some people talking about it as if it's a 9.5 out of 10. It's definitely a really good building. There's no question about that. It's more than satisfactory. It's a B grade building. I would never shy away from taking any buyer to this. In fact, in a lot of cases, this building is your best case scenario. But it does have its faults. Nonetheless, it is close to the water. There's a lot of development coming. Units in this building have some immaculate views. And then also there are some 2-bedroom units in this building that have awful views. The corner units in these buildings have absolutely immaculate views though, and that was the unit I actually brought onto the market, was a corner unit. This is actually one of those rare buildings where 1+1s can sell more than 2 bedrooms, simply due to the exposure. But it's built by Great Golf. You guys know how big a fan I am of Great Golf. The lobby looks beautiful. I like, how the lobby is designed. The concierge, every time I've been there, has been quite helpful. This building, some of the floors actually have the lockers on those floors, so that's actually quite convenient as well, where I believe it's more so on the 12 Bonnycastle side, the lockers are on the same floor as the units. Less so in 16 Bonnycastle, but they're technically one building, right? They have different lobbies. The main lobby is 16 Bonnycastle, but in terms of legal condominium corporation, they're just one condominium corp. It is a little bit on the eastern side of downtown. As of right now, there is no streetcar that comes to this stretch of Queens Quay, but obviously the subway line is coming shortly, not right at the doorstep of this building, but close to this building, and there is a bus that goes by. The amenities are once again fantastic. I think the amenities are more so what I like, right? Rather than comparing it, for instance, to the Lakeshore buildings we just discussed. They're still smaller than the Lakeshore buildings. That's not to say they're limited. The gym is quite state-of-the-art. The party room is quite large and nice as well. The outdoor pool, if you're a fan of an outdoor pool with scenic views, kind of the infinity pool type of vibe, although it's not technically infinity pool, but it's an outdoor pool where you can take cool Instagram photos. This has that as well. The only other minor complaints I might have is that elevator wait times can be a bit slow in this building. I've experienced it firsthand. And the maintenance is a little bit on the higher end for what you get, right? At least, like for instance with the Queens Quay buildings that we discussed, they have really high maintenance, is higher than this by a lot, but they're all inclusive. You get a lot for your maintenance. You get all the utilities paid. You can use the utilities as much as you like. Here, not much is included. The internet is included. I believe the TV is included as well. But however, for some, they're willing to pay that. They would much rather have, the utilities included, which this only has one of the utilities included. But this building performs exceptionally well in terms of resale value, so it maintains value greatly. And yes, it's another entry on my list of best waterfront condos in Toronto. Right across this building is probably the building that I would rank as the best from this list. Now, as I said earlier, this list is not in any chronological order. Some are better, some are worse. They're not all in the same higher echelon. But I would probably have to say, when I'm about to list this current building, which is a waterfront condo, which is even closer to the waterfront than Bonnycastle, it's across the street. One Edgewater is probably the best condo on this list. Now, longtime viewers of this channel are gonna first accuse me of being a Tridel groupie, and then kind of get nauseated at the comparison I'm going to draw, because they're quite sick of me talking about this other building. I probably bring it up in every video. Somehow I kind of relate it back to 25 Andrew Greater Way in Shepherd and Leslie in Bayview Village. I would probably have to say this building, one Edgewater, is probably the downtown Andrew Greater Way. What Tridel did with 25 Andrew Greater Way in North York at Shepherd and Leslie, this project is their version of that in downtown. As much as I love Edgewater, one Edgewater, and as much as I'm saying it's probably the best condo on this list, I still wouldn't say it's as good as Andrew Greater Way. That has its own special place in my heart. One Edgewater is fantastic. You can expect the same high quality finishes. It's definitely a premium building. Stuff like you wouldn't even notice or even think about, like hallway width, door quality, just everything feels quality. The concierge is great. Every time I've been there, they've been great. The water views in this building are absolutely fantastic and so private. And really, behind this building, the street that's behind this building, where most of the water views are exposed to, is so quiet and so serene. It's almost like you're not in downtown. It's still downtown core, but it's so surprisingly quiet. It is an expensive building, it really is. I helped a client of mine, a fellow viewer of this channel, rent a unit in this building, and per square foot, we paid a pretty high rental price, but at the end of the day, it is premium and it's gonna have that premium cost, whether you're buying or renting. Now, it's not perfect. Once again, no building's perfect. Some of the feedback I've heard is that this building during the summer months, especially at night, does get a lot of mosquitoes on the balcony. It's just a matter of fact. There's no way you're gonna avoid that, especially in humid summer months at night when you're so close to the water. And this is probably, of any building I've listed on this list, or I am going to list on this list, in sheer proximity is probably the closest to the water. Let's move forward and let's swing all the way back to the west once again. Now we're gonna talk about 70 Annie Craig, Vita on the Lake, once again by Mattamy Homes. I must preface, once again, not a big fan of Mattamy Homes, but this building is good. I have to be honest, I have to call a spade a spade. They built a pretty good building in this building. Of the Annie Craig buildings, it's probably the best, I would say. And it's yet another building that I have done a transaction in. I sold a penthouse condo in this building with immaculate city views, immaculate lake views, immaculate downtown Toronto views with the CN Tower view. Go check that video out. I did a whole entire video talking about that penthouse. So I talk about the building a little bit more in that video as well, but quickly here, once again, I must say it's probably, you know, around a 7, 7.5. It's not perfect. It's not, you know, near the quality of the other ones I've discussed, but given the adjacent buildings and the lower quality of those, I would probably have to say, in comparison, this is much better than the other Annie Craig buildings, and especially the Shore Breeze buildings. Those Shore Breeze buildings are a whole entire story in of themselves. One thing I really like about this building is their smart elevator system, which other buildings have started to incorporate. Now, the smart elevator system in this building was quite common for commercial buildings, but there, you know, not a lot of residential builders were using the smart elevator system, where you command the floor first. The elevator comes to, you know, pick you up and take you to the floor you've commanded, as opposed to the more traditional way where you get into the elevator and then command the floor. So as a result, the elevator wait times in this building are quite impressive for the size, the high rise, and then you have some absolutely immaculate views. Like, I know I've already said that already in this video, but if you're okay with the western, you know, location where it's in Mimico, it's Humber Bay, you can get really crazy scenic once in a lifetime 1 in 1 million views, which that penthouse I sold had. You can check it out in the video, and the video doesn't even really capture what your eyes in person can see. But once again, this building, much like for instance One Edgewater, will have mosquitoes on the balconies, even as high as the 60th floor, because it's so close to the water. And back when I used to go to this building quite frequently, the concierge and front desk were really nice, really helpful people. It seems as if since, you know, and that was a year ago, since then it seems some new people have come and they haven't been trained as well. But for the most part, this building does have a good reputation in terms of how helpful the security and front desk are. Visitor parking is a little bit tight, and in this stretch, really traffic can get a lot. And of course, we know all the construction that is to come in this area, where currently the Cirque du Soleil is. There's gonna be like, you know, 11 to 15 towers or something like that. So you can expect this area to be more congested in the future. It's a pretty good building, pretty good choice. The only last minor observation that I would share is that reception in this building is not that great sometimes, if you're on data or, you know, if you're using your phone. But that seems to be a common thing for these buildings across Marine Parade. It's less an issue with this building. I would probably have to say it's more of a symptom of the larger area on Marine Parade. However, despite the warts, many pros, less cons. That's why it makes another entry on this list of best waterfront condos in Toronto. One building a lot of people would probably want me to comment on in this video, it will be the Pier 27 building, 39 Queens Quay East. Now, the thing about this building is I don't have any, you know, faults with it, but I would not rank it as the best waterfront condos myself personally, although obviously I'm including it on this list. who are you to speak, Sam? The only reason I'm including it on this list is naturally a lot of people will talk about and ask about this building and why it wasn't on the list. And it's not, once again, that I think it's a bad building. However, I do think it's quite overrated. Let me tell you why. Per square foot, this building is one of the most expensive buildings in downtown. And per square foot, when we take a look at condos that are really fronting on the water, really close to the water, this is probably the most expensive on this list. It's even more expensive than the one at Edgewater. I believe when I checked, I think in the last 6 months, it's been selling around $1,150 per square foot. Some units sell around $1,200 per square foot. And really, every time I've been in this building, I just did not see why that was the case. The units are quite miniature in size, which is another thing I'll bring up, which is another observation that I'm going to bring up shortly with another building. Don't get me wrong, once again, there's nothing particularly wrong with the lobby, with the amenities, with the units, but I just don't see what the special wow factor with this building is. The design is beautiful. I like the design. The architecture is different. It's new. So certainly the architecture stands out, and the location is, quite decent as well. It's a little bit further central than Bonnycastle and Edgewater. Edgewater and Bonnycastle a little bit further east than this. But there isn't anything it provides to me as a buyer's agent that I would say, let's definitely look at this building over Bonnycastle or over Edgewater for sure, when I think those buildings are a little bit better to significantly better and are a bit cheaper. Although once again, those are on the expensive side, don't get me wrong, but they're not as expensive as this one. Nonetheless, though, if the unit is the right fit for you, the building has maintained resale value clearly from the high per square foot price. It could be a good choice if the unit is a good unit. And the last entry on this list for this video is 80. And moving forward to the last entry, I would probably have to say 80 and 88 Palace Pier. Now these are a little bit older. They're not as old as one Palace Pier. I believe one Palace Pier is older than these even. But all in all, this is probably a pretty good building if, once again, resale value is not at the top of your list. Although for the age, this building has performed quite well in resale value. This building has a shuttle bus to the downtown core. It has a doorman, a 24-hour staff, valet parking, really things of a bygone era. No building has these anymore. The management, from everything I've heard and seen firsthand, is excellent. If anything, the management can be a little bit too hands-on and protective of the building, which as the owner resident you would love. As an agent, not so much. The corridors are clean all the time, so are the common areas. And it's a quiet building, right? It's a quiet building because most of the owners and residents in these buildings tend to be the retirees, much older, in their early 60s and 70s. Not to say everyone, obviously, but these buildings in terms of demographic lean much older. And it's really close to the water as well. I would probably have to say it's perhaps equally as close, maybe a little bit further than Edgewater is to the water in downtown. This is quite relatively close. Not as close as Edgewater, but really close. However, since it's an older building, some of the units might be outdated. They will require a renovation. Units don't really have outdoor spaces in this building. And there's some odd layouts for sure in this building, like some inefficient, impractical layouts. Not that even they're small or narrow, like the modern shoebox condos that are inefficient and non-practical. These layouts are big, but weirdly shaped sometimes. Not for every unit, but for some of the ones and 1+1s that I've seen. All right, guys, I am so tired of talking. My mouth is dry, and I know there's probably 3-4 other buildings I could have listed. Lower Jarvis, although I have complicated feelings on that one. 20 Richardson, some other buildings in Mimico, and we didn't even touch on the Scarborough Bluffs and any condos that might be there as well. But anyways, that is it for today's video. I am tired. I would like to end this video. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know if you have any further questions in the comments. Subscribe, comment, rate, and review. You can get in touch with me. My contact information in the description box. Thank you. Stay safe and stay tuned. Thank you.